The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Councillor Vethra stood at the central podium, his thin gray fingers trembling as he held the communication tablet. Around him, representatives from 47 species sat in their designated seats, arranged in a massive circle that rose up toward the domed ceiling. The dome showed the stars outside, a reminder that they governed not just planets but an entire galaxy. But today, the stars felt cold. "They have refused again," Vethra announced. His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but the hall's acoustics carried it to every ear and translation device. "The humans have declined all communication. Their automated systems repeat the same message. Communication declined. No representatives will be sent." Asked. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. The Korath ambassador shifted in his seat, his armored plates clicking together nervously. The delegate from the Vesson Collective covered her face with all four hands. Even the normally calm Peliran hosts exchanged worried glances. "This is unprecedented," said Ambassador Grell of the Toshan Empire. His voice boomed across the hall. "In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no species has ever refused to negotiate. It goes against all reason." Vethra nodded slowly. He was old, even by Melleran standards, and he had served on this council for 60 cycles. He had seen wars begin and end. He had watched empires rise and fall, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans were silent, and their silence was terrifying. 3 cycles ago, everything had been normal. The humans were a young species, barely 200 years into space travel. They had joined the council with enthusiasm, eager to trade and learn. They smiled too much, laughed too loud, and asked too many questions. Many of the older species found them annoying, but harmless. Then came the incident at Harmony 7. Vethra closed his eyes, remembering the reports. A Melleran patrol fleet had entered the Harmony system, claiming they detected illegal weapons signatures. The human colony governor had protested, insisting there were no weapons. The Melleran commander had not believed him. What happened next was supposed to be a simple enforcement action, a warning, a show of strength to remind the young species of their place. Instead, it became a massacre. The Melleran ships had fired on the colony. They had destroyed the planetary defense grid in minutes. Then, they had targeted the cities. Evacuation transports tried to flee, carrying civilians, families, children, elderly to safety. The Melleran ships shot them down like insects. When it was over, 2.3 million humans were dead. The colony was ash and rubble. And the Melleran commander had sent a simple report back to his superiors. Resistance neutralized. Colony pacified. Vethra had been horrified when he learned the truth. This was not what the council had authorized. This was not policy. This was murder. He had immediately opened channels to Earth, offering explanations, apologies, promises of justice. The humans had not responded. At first, the council thought it was shock. The humans were grieving. They needed time, so the council waited. But as the days passed, the silence grew heavier. Human ships began moving along the borders, not attacking, just watching. Human colonies went dark, their communication channels closing one by one. Human merchants disappeared from trade stations. Human diplomats packed their belongings and left without a word. Ambassador Quan De Sung had been the last to go. Vethra had tried to speak with him, to explain that this was a terrible mistake, that the responsible parties would be punished. Quan had looked at him with eyes that held no anger, no hatred, just nothing. "There is nothing to discuss," Quan had said. Then he had walked away. Now, 3 cycles later, the council sat in a chamber that felt more like a tomb. They had sent dozens of messages to Earth. They had offered reparations, territory, resources. They had promised to hand over the Melleran commander for trial. They had begged. The humans sent nothing back but that cold, automated message. Far from Polara Prime, In the darkness between stars, Admiral Park Gina stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. She was a small woman, barely reaching the shoulders of most of her crew, but when she spoke, giants listened. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform was spotless. She had not slept in 2 days, but her eyes were sharp and clear. "Admiral," said Captain Yoon Tae-ho, approaching with a tablet. "Another transmission from the Council. Counselor Vethra is requesting immediate talks. He says they will agree to any terms." Park Gina did not look at the tablet. She kept her eyes on the main view screen, which showed the vast emptiness of space. Out there, somewhere, the Maloran were preparing their defenses. They knew what was coming. "Delete it," she said. Tae-ho hesitated. He was a good officer, loyal and smart, but he was also young. He still believed in talking, in reason, in finding peaceful solutions. Park Gina had believed in those things too. Once. "Admiral," Tae-ho said carefully, "if we continue to ignore them, they will think we are planning total war. They will panic. They might do something desperate." Park Gina finally turned to face him. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful, but Tae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. "Good," she said. "Let them panic." She walked past him toward the central command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. These were the best officers in the fleet, selected for this mission because they understood what was at stake. "Captain," Park Gina said as she sat down, "do you know why we are not talking to them?" Tae-ho shook his head. "Because there is nothing they can say that will bring back the dead," Park Gina said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "They killed 2 million of our people. Children, Tae-ho, families. They shot down evacuation ships, filled with people trying to escape. And now, they want to talk. They want to negotiate. They want to find a compromise." She leaned forward, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. What compromise brings back a child to her mother? What negotiation returns a husband to his wife? What reparation gives back a future to those who had their lives stolen from them? Park Gina shook her head slowly. "No, they do not get to talk. They do not get to explain. They do not get to apologize and move on like nothing happened." Tae-ho stood still, absorbing her words. He thought of his own family back on Earth. His younger sister. His aging parents. He thought of what he would feel if they had been on Harmony 7. "What do they get?" he asked quietly. Admiral Park Gina looked back at the view screen. Somewhere in that darkness, the Iron Fleet was gathering the largest human armada ever assembled. Ships from every colony, every station, every corner of human space. They were coming together in silence, moving with a single purpose. "They get to wait," Park Gina said. "They get to wonder. They get to feel what our people felt when they saw those ships in the sky and realized no one was coming to save them." One. She pressed a button on her armrest, and a star chart appeared on the main screen. At its center was the Thessar system, the Melaran homeworld. "They get to learn," Park Gina said, "that some things cannot be forgiven." On Pellara Prime, Counselor Vethra stared at the blank communication screen. Another message ignored. Another plea unheard. He felt the eyes of the entire council on him, waiting for him to offer some solution, some path forward. But for the first time in his long career, Vethra had no answers. The humans were silent, and in their silence was something the council had never faced before. A species that did not want to talk. And that was the most frightening thing of all. The spy network of the Galactic Council was the finest in known space. For thousands of years, they had gathered secrets from every corner of the galaxy. They knew the private conversations of emperors and the hidden plans of generals. Nothing escaped their notice. Until now. Lieutenant Commander Baek Somi sat in a small room on Station Valar 9, a neutral trading post on the edge of human space. She wore the clothes of a merchant plane. Forgettable. Exactly what she wanted. On the table in front of her sat a glass of water she had not touched, and a communicator she checked every few minutes. She was waiting for her contact. The door opened, and a Pelleran entered. His skin was the color of pale sand, and his large eyes moved nervously around the room before settling on her. This was Coordinator Des, one of the Council's senior intelligence officers. He thought he was recruiting her as an informant. He was wrong. "Thank you for meeting me," Des said, sitting across from her. "I know this is dangerous for you." Bakesomi nodded, keeping her expression worried and uncertain. It was easy to look scared. All she had to do was remember Harmony 7. Remember the footage of burning cities and falling evacuation ships. And the fear came naturally. The difference was that her fear had long ago turned into something colder. "The Council needs information," Des continued. "We need to understand what the humans are planning. Our analysts are seeing ship movements, fleet gatherings, but we cannot determine the pattern. We cannot find the logic." "There is no logic," Bakesomi said. She let her voice tremble slightly. "They are angry. They are not thinking clearly. The fleet admirals are pushing for war, and the civilian government cannot stop them." Des leaned forward, his eyes wide. "War? But that would be suicide. The Melleran have the Council's support. The humans cannot stand against the combined forces of... The humans do not care." Bakesomi shook her head. "You do not understand. After Harmony 7, something broke. I have seen officers crying at their stations. I have seen soldiers volunteering for frontline positions, knowing they will die. They do not want victory. They want revenge." She watched Des process this information. She could see the fear growing in his eyes. Exactly as she intended. Everything she told him was technically true. The emotions were real. The anger was real. The grief was real. But she was framing it in a way that would lead the Council to the wrong conclusions. Let them think humans were irrational. Let them think the fleet was out of control. Let them underestimate the cold, careful planning that was actually taking place. "What about the negotiations?" Des asked. "The Council has offered everything. Surely some in your government want to talk." Bakesomi almost laughed. Instead, she shook her head sadly. "Every time the Council sends a message, it makes things worse," she said. "The people see it as mockery. They think the Council is not taking their pain seriously. They think the Melleran are hiding behind diplomacy to escape justice." This was also true. But what she did not tell Des was that the human government was deliberately amplifying these feelings. Every Council message was broadcast across human space, with commentary highlighting its inadequacy. Every offer of reparations was analyzed to show how it fell short. The government was not trying to calm the population. It was forging them into a weapon. Des left the meeting 30 minutes later, carrying a data chip filled with false intelligence. Fleet positions that were slightly wrong. Command structures that were slightly confused. Strategic priorities that were slightly mistaken. All of it close enough to the truth to be believable, but different enough to lead the Council astray. Bakesomi watched him go, then activated her secure communicator. "Package delivered," she said. "They are scared. They will become more scared." On the other side of the galaxy, Hegemon Drosvar of the Koreth hegemony stood in his war room, studying a holographic display of human space. The Koroth were massive creatures, built like mountains of muscle and armor. They had fought humans before, in border skirmishes and trade disputes, and they had always considered the smaller species beneath their notice. Now, Drosvar was not so sure. "Show me the fleet movements again," he ordered. His tactical officer adjusted the display. Red dots, representing human ships, began to move, converging from dozens of locations toward a central point. The pattern had been repeating for cycles, ships gathering, massing, forming into something enormous. "We count over 800 capital ships," the tactical officer reported, "plus support vessels, carriers, and supply lines. This is the largest human fleet ever assembled." Drosvar grunted. "Where are they going? Where? Are they going? Unknown, hegemon. Their final destination remains hidden. Drosvar studied the display in silence. The Korath had been rivals of humanity for decades, competing for resources and territory. If any species should be pleased to see the humans and Melaran destroy each other, it was the Korath. But Drosvar was not pleased. He was worried. He had intercepted human military communications, not secret plans, just routine chatter between ships and stations. What he heard disturbed him. There was no panic in the human voices, no fear, no uncertainty, just calm, focused determination. These were not the actions of a species acting in blind rage. This was something planned, something patient, something dangerous. Drosvar made a decision. He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to Counselor Vethra," he said. "Private, encrypted. Make sure no one else receives this message." An hour later, Vethra sat alone in his quarters, reading the hegemon's words on his personal screen. "Counselor," the message said, "I am writing to inform you that the Korath hegemony will not support the Melaran in the coming conflict. We are reinforcing our borders and recalling our ambassadors from Council space. This is not negotiable. You have made a terrible mistake. You looked at the humans and saw a young species, emotional and foolish. You thought their kindness was weakness, and their smiles meant they could be controlled. You were wrong. I have fought humans. I have seen them retreat when outnumbered, and surrender when defeated. But I have also seen them hold positions they should have abandoned. I have seen them charge into battles they could not win. And I have seen what happens when you take something from them that they love. They do not forget, they do not forgive, and they do not stop. You killed their children, Counselor. You burned their homes. You laughed at their pain and called it a miscommunication. And now you wonder why they will not talk to you. You woke something that does not sleep. We will not stand beside you when it comes." Vethra read the message 3 times, feeling colder each time. The Korath were leaving. If they left, others would follow. The coalition he had built was crumbling. He tried one more time to reach the humans. He prepared a personal message, pouring all his sincerity into it. He apologized, not as a counselor, but as a person. He begged for the chance to make things right. He sent the message to the human border station. The response came in minutes, but it was not words. It was footage. The footage showed a council envoy ship approaching the human border. It was a diplomatic vessel, clearly marked, carrying ambassadors who wanted only to talk. The ship had been warned to turn back. It had refused, insisting on its right to negotiate. The human defense platforms had destroyed it. One shot, clean and precise, and the ship was gone. Vethra stared at the footage in horror. Diplomats. They had killed diplomats. He called an emergency council session, but even as representatives gathered, he could see the change in their eyes. They were not angry at the humans, they were afraid. And deep in human space, aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Park Gina received the report of the envoy ship's destruction. She nodded once, showing no emotion. "They were warned," she said. "Send the footage to every news network in the galaxy. Let everyone see. Everyone see. Everyone see." Captain Yoon Taeho hesitated. "Admiral, killing diplomats, it will turn opinion against us." Park Gina looked at him. "No," she said. "It will show them that we are serious. It will show them that we cannot be talked down, bought off, or ignored. It will show them that we mean exactly what we say." She turned back to the view screen. "And it will show the Melaran's allies what it costs to stand with those who murder children. Let them think very carefully about which side they want to be on." Across the galaxy, species watched the footage and asked themselves that very question. More and more of them did not like the answer. The silence ended on a Tuesday. Every communication channel in the galaxy, council networks, civilian broadcasts, military frequencies, Even private encrypted lines suddenly carried the same signal. There was no warning, no announcement. One moment, there was normal traffic. The next moment, there was only one thing: a woman standing in ashes. President O'Meara stood in what had once been the central plaza of New Hope City, the capital of Harmony 7. Behind her stretched kilometers of gray wasteland, the remains of buildings, vehicles, and lives. The sky above was brown with dust that still had not settled after 3 cycles. The wind carried flakes of ash that landed on her shoulders like black snow. She wore a simple dark suit, no medals or symbols of office. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her face showed every one of her 60 years. She looked directly into the camera with eyes that were red from crying but steady and clear. She did not speak at first. She simply stood there, letting the galaxy see what the Melloran had done. Then she began to read. An Byung-ho, age 47. Teacher, husband, father of 3. She paused, took a breath, and continued. An Ji-young, age 44. Doctor, wife. Another pause. An Seojin, age 16. Student, daughter. An Woojin, age 12. Student, son. Ain Nari, age 7. Daughter. 5 names, 1 family, gone. President O'Meara continued reading, name after name after name. She did not describe how they died. She did not talk about the attack, or the Melloran, or the council. She simply read names, gave ages, and said what each person had been: baker, engineer, nurse, farmer, child, grandmother, newborn. Across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing and watched. On council stations, diplomats stood frozen in hallways, staring at screens. On trading posts, merchants forgot their negotiations. On warships, soldiers gathered around view screens in mess halls and break rooms. Some turned away after a few minutes, unable to bear it. Others forced themselves to keep watching. And as the minutes became hours, something began to change. These were not numbers anymore. These were not 2.3 million casualties in a report. These were people. Real people with names and families and jobs and dreams. Every single one of them read aloud by the leader of their world, given a moment of recognition before the galaxy that had let them die. President O'Meara read for 6 hours without stopping. Her voice grew hoarse, but she did not pause for water. When she reached the end of one list, she began another. When she stumbled over a name, she went back and read it again correctly. She owed them that much. After 6 hours, she stopped. She had not read all the names that would take days, but she had read enough. The point had been made. She looked into the camera again. Those were some of the people who died on Harmony 7, she said. Her voice was rough but steady. They were not soldiers. They were not threats. They were families. They were our families. The camera moved, showing Admiral Park Gina standing nearby. The Admiral's face was stone, but her eyes were wet. She pressed a button on a device in her hand. The view changed to recorded footage. The galaxy saw Harmony 7 before the attack. Cities gleaming in sunlight, parks filled with children, streets busy with life. Then, the Melloran ships appeared in the sky. And everything changed. The footage showed the bombardment, buildings exploding into dust, streets turning to rivers of fire, people running, screaming, dying. The audio was the worst part. The sounds of terror, of pain, of children crying for parents they would never see again. Then the evacuation transports. The footage showed them rising from the ground, packed with civilians trying to escape. It showed the Melloran ships turning toward them. It showed them opening fire. One transport after another exploded in the sky, raining debris and bodies onto the burning city below. The footage ended. President O'Meara stood alone again in the ashes. The council calls this a miscommunication, she said. They say it was a mistake, an error in judgment, a regrettable incident. They offer reparations. They offer apologies. They offer to punish those responsible. She shook her head slowly. They offer us things. As if things can replace what we have lost. As if money can bring back the dead. As if words can undo what was done. They offer us things. We have new 3-second. In Reezer. In 4 possibles. We have comfort out. And Rees. And help part. And offer us things. She stepped forward, and the camera focused on her face. We do not want your things. We do not want your money. We do not want your words. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. We have nothing to discuss. The view changed one last time. A young girl appeared on the screen. She was small, maybe 9 years old, with short black hair and a bandage on her forehead. Her name was Han Yuri, and she was one of the few survivors of New Hope City. She sat in a simple chair, looking at the camera with eyes that had seen too much. My name is Han Yuri, she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. I lived on Harmony 7, with my mother, my father, and my little brother. When the ships came, my mother told me to hide. She said the aliens would help us. She said they would see we were not dangerous, and they would stop. The girl paused. Her hands trembled in her lap. She was wrong, Han Yuri said. They killed her. They killed my father. They killed my brother. He was only 4 years old. He did not know what was happening. He was crying for our mother when the fire came. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she did not look away from the camera. The council says they are sorry, she said. But sorry does not bring back my family. Sorry does not give me back my home. Sorry does not help me sleep at night without seeing my mother's face as she told me to hide. She took a shaky breath. I do not want them to be sorry. I want them to remember. I want them to remember what they did. I want them to remember the names of all the people they killed. I want them to remember that we trusted them, and they burned us. Her young voice hardened. I want them to remember forever. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, there was silence across the galaxy. Then, slowly, reactions began to pour in. On a dozen worlds, Melloran merchants found their contracts canceled without explanation. On trading stations, Melloran ships were denied docking privileges. On neutral planets, Melloran diplomats were asked to leave for their own safety. Species that had remained neutral began making quiet announcements. They would not support the Council's efforts to force negotiations. They would not provide resources or assistance to the Melloran. They would not stand with those who killed children. Councillor Vethra watched the reactions with growing despair. The broadcast had done what no military strike could do. It had turned the moral weight of the galaxy against his people. The Melloran were no longer seen as a powerful member of the Council. They were seen as murderers. He tried to contact President O'Meara directly. He wrote a personal message, begging for the chance to make amends. He received a response within the hour. It was from Ambassador Kwon Dae-sung, who had returned from Earth specifically to deliver it. Counselor, the message said, the President has read your communication. She has asked me to reply on her behalf. Her answer is this: the dead cannot hear your apologies, and the living do not want them. The message ended. Vethra sat in his office, surrounded by the trappings of power awards, diplomas, photos with galactic leaders, and felt them all turn to ashes in his hands. On Earth, Han Yuri sat in a temporary shelter with other survivors, watching the news reports of the galaxy's reaction. She did not smile. She did not feel victory. She felt only the empty space where her family used to be. But when she looked up at the stars that night, she felt something else too. She felt that finally, someone was listening, and soon someone would answer. The great hall of the Galactic Council had never felt so empty. Seats that had been filled for generations now sat vacant, their occupants gone. The holographic nameplates still glowed above them: Torshan Empire, Vesson Collective, Korath Hegemony, but the chairs beneath were cold. 7 species had formally withdrawn in the past cycle. More were considering it. Every day brought new announcements, new cancellations, new excuses. The coalition that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years was falling apart. Counselor Vethra stood at the central podium, looking out at what remained. Perhaps 30 representatives sat scattered across the vast chamber, huddled in small groups, whispering to each other. They would not meet his eyes. He understood. He was Melaron. He represented the species that had murdered millions of innocents and called it a miscommunication. He was the face of everything that had gone wrong. Fellow counselors, he began, his voice echoing in the half-empty hall, I come before you today to make a final offer to the humans. This offer represents everything we can give, everything we have. He activated the holographic display, showing a list that he had spent sleepless nights preparing. Full financial reparations, 10 trillion credits, enough to rebuild Harmony 7 twice over. Territorial concessions, 3 star systems on our border, given freely and permanently. Military restrictions, a reduction of our fleet by 40%, verified by neutral observers. He paused, gathering his strength for the hardest part. And finally, the complete surrender of all personnel involved in the Harmony 7 attack, the commanders who gave the orders, the officers who carried them out, the soldiers who fired on evacuation ships. All of them, handed over to human custody for trial and punishment. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was unprecedented. No species had ever offered to surrender its own people for foreign judgment. It was an admission of total guilt, a sacrifice of honor and pride. Vethra did not care about honor anymore. He cared about stopping what was coming. I will transmit this offer to Earth within the hour, he said. I will beg them to accept. I will grovel if I must. But I need this council to understand something. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of those who would still look at him. If they refuse, there is nothing more we can do. We have offered everything. We have admitted everything. If that is not enough, then nothing will be enough, and we must prepare for the consequences. The transmission went out that afternoon. Every detail of the offer was included, along with a personal message from Vethra expressing his deepest regret and his sincere hope for reconciliation. He wrote that the Melaron people had been horrified by what was done in their name. He wrote that they wanted justice as much as the humans did. He wrote that he would do anything, to prevent more bloodshed. The response came 3 hours later. It was 2 sentences long. Your offers are noted. We will proceed as planned. Vethra read it a dozen times, hoping to find some hidden meaning, some opening for further communication. There was none. The humans had acknowledged receiving the offer. They had not accepted it. They had not rejected it. They had simply noted it and moved on. That was almost worse than outright rejection. It meant the offer was irrelevant. It meant nothing the Melaron could do would change what was about to happen. On Thessar, the Melaron homeworld, High Commander Breltai prepared for war. The High Commander was a veteran of 30 campaigns. He had fought pirates, rebels, and enemy fleets. He had won battles that seemed unwinnable, and held positions that seemed indefensible. He was considered the finest military mind the Melaron had produced in generations, and he was terrified, not of the human fleet though it was enormous, larger than any force ever assembled, not of human weapons though they were advanced and deadly, not even of human tactics, though their unpredictability made planning difficult. He was terrified of human determination. Breltai had studied every human conflict in recorded history. He had analyzed their strategies, their strengths, their weaknesses, and he had found a pattern that chilled him to his core. Humans did not know when to stop. Other species fought until the cost became too high, then negotiated. They made rational calculations about losses and gains, about acceptable outcomes and strategic retreats. They knew when to quit. Humans did not. They had fought wars among themselves that lasted decades. They had suffered casualties in the millions, sometimes the tens of millions, and kept fighting. They had destroyed cities, poisoned lands, and shattered civilizations rather than accept defeat. And that was when they fought each other. That was when both sides were human, when both sides could eventually agree, that enough was enough. What would they do when fighting someone who had killed their children? Breltai knew the answer. They would not stop. They would keep coming, keep fighting, keep dying, until either they were destroyed or their enemy was. There would be no negotiation, no compromise, no peace, only victory or annihilation. He gathered his officers and gave them the truth. Morale was already shattered, their own allies had abandoned them, and the galaxy saw them as monsters. But they were still soldiers. They still had their duty. We will fight, Breltai told them. We will defend our homes and our families. We will make them pay for every system, every station, every ship, and perhaps, when the cost becomes high enough, they will realize that vengeance is not worth it. But even as he said the words, he did not believe them. Ambassador Quan Daisung appeared on council channels one final time. He did not speak to Veth Ra or to any official representative. He simply made a public broadcast that was carried across the galaxy. He stood in a simple room with a plain gray background. He wore civilian clothes, not diplomatic attire. He spoke calmly, without emotion, as if discussing the weather. The council has asked us many times why we will not negotiate, he said. I will answer that question now, so there is no further misunderstanding. He folded his hands in front of him. We will not negotiate because there is nothing you possess that we want. He let that sink in. You offer money. We do not want your money. You offer territory. We do not want your territory. You offer justice. But your justice means a trial, a sentence, a prison cell. That is not justice. That is paperwork. His voice remained calm, but his words cut like knives. You offer to hand over those responsible. But those responsible followed orders. They did what their commanders told them to do, what their government allowed them to do. You offer us soldiers when we want the system that created them. He shook his head slowly. You do not understand what you took from us. You think it was lives, 2.3 million lives. But it was more than that. It was trust. For 200 years, we trusted this galaxy. We joined your council. We followed your rules. We believed that civilization meant something, that there were limits, that some things were not done. His jaw tightened. You showed us that we were wrong. You showed us that there are no limits, no rules, no civilization, only power. You taught us that the only way to be safe is to be too dangerous to attack. You taught us that kindness is seen as weakness, and trust is seen as foolishness. He stepped closer to the camera. So now, we will teach you something. We will teach you that human kindness is a gift, not a right. We will teach you that our trust must be earned, not assumed. And we will teach you that when you take something from us that we love, we will take something from you that you can never get back. He paused. You wish to know why we won't negotiate. It is because there is nothing you possess that we want. Only something you can never return. The broadcast ended. On Pelara Prime, Counselor Veth Ra sat alone in the empty council chamber, watching the message loop on the main screen. Around him, the vacant seats seemed to mock him. This great hall, this symbol of galactic unity and cooperation, had become a tomb. He had dedicated his life to diplomacy. He had believed that any problem could be solved with enough patience, enough understanding, enough willingness to compromise. He had believed that rational beings would always choose peace over war. The humans had proven him wrong, not because they were irrational. That was what made it so terrifying. They were completely rational. They had simply made a rational decision that peace was no longer possible. They had calculated the costs and benefits and concluded that war was the only option that addressed what had been done to them. And now, the Iron Fleet was moving. Reports came in throughout the day. Human ships were crossing the border into Melloran space. Not scattered raids, not probing attacks, a full advance. Hundreds of capital ships in perfect formation, moving with terrible purpose toward Thessar. Veth Ra watched the tactical displays and felt history turning. The galaxy he had known was ending. Whatever came next, Whatever emerged from this war, it would be something different. He only hoped there would be enough left to rebuild. The battle for Thessar began on a quiet morning. High Commander Brel Tai stood in the central command center of the orbital defense grid, watching the human fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel. Ships appeared in waves, dropping out of warp in precise formations. First, the destroyers, spreading out to secure the perimeter. Then the cruisers, forming defensive lines. Then the carriers, launching fighters like swarms of angry insects. And finally, at the center of it all, the massive battleships, the heart of the Iron Fleet. At the front was the UES Indomitable, Admiral Park Gina's flagship. All defense stations, prepare to engage, Brel Tai ordered. His voice was calm. He had accepted what was coming. Now he simply had to do his duty. The first shots were fired at 0847 hours. Missiles and energy beams crossed the void between the fleets, smashing into shields and armor. Ships on both sides took damage, some critical. Explosions bloomed in the darkness like brief, beautiful flowers. The battle had begun. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Yoon Tae-ho coordinated the assault from the tactical station. His screens showed a chaos of information: ship positions, damage reports, ammunition levels, fighter deployments. He processed it all with the cool efficiency of a machine, making decisions in fractions of seconds. But he was not a machine. He was a man who had seen the footage of Harmony 7. He was a man who had read the names of the dead. He was a man who knew exactly why he was here and what he was fighting for. Squadron 7. Advance to coordinates 447, he said. Squadron 12. Cover their approach. All batteries, target the defense platform at grid reference 18 Alpha. Admiral Park Gina stood at the center of the bridge, watching the battle unfold. She did not give many orders. She had chosen her officers well, and they knew what to do. Her job was to see the whole picture, to understand the flow of the battle, to make the decisions that would determine victory or defeat. Admiral, Tae-ho reported, the outer defense ring is collapsing. We have breached their perimeter at 3 points. Park Gina nodded. Press the attack, but maintain discipline. Military targets only. I want precision, not carnage. This was the order she had given from the beginning. The order that confused the Melleran and surprised the watching galaxy. The human fleet was not burning everything in its path. It was not destroying cities or killing civilians. It was systematically dismantling the Melleran military with surgical precision. Defense platforms were targeted and destroyed. Military shipyards were reduced to rubble. Command centers were identified and eliminated. But civilian infrastructure was left untouched. Population centers were avoided. Even Melleran escape pods were allowed to flee without pursuit. The humans were not here to exterminate. They were here to defeat. The battle raged for 9 days. 9 days of constant combat, of ships destroyed and lives lost, of attack and counterattack. The Melleran fought with desperation, knowing they were fighting for their homes, their families, their survival. It was not enough. On the 7th day, Captain Yoon Tae-ho led a squadron of destroyers against the main orbital defense grid. It was the most heavily protected installation in the system, ringed with weapons, platforms, and shielded by overlapping energy fields. Taking it down would be incredibly dangerous. Tae-ho volunteered for the mission personally. Captain, Admiral Park, Gina said before he left. Come back alive. Yes, Admiral, Tae-ho replied. But they both knew there were no guarantees. The assault was brutal. Tae-ho's squadron took heavy fire from the moment they approached. 2 destroyers were crippled in the first minutes. A third was destroyed completely, breaking apart in a ball of flame. But the remaining ships pressed on, weaving through the defensive fire, closing the distance. Tae-ho's ship, the Relentless, reached the grid's primary control node. He ordered all weapons to fire at once: missiles, energy beams, everything they had. The node's shields flickered, wavered, and failed. The next volley struck the node directly, punching through its armor and detonating its core. The orbital defense grid went dark. Thessar lay open. On the 10th day, High Commander Brel Tai surrendered. He had no choice. His fleet was destroyed. His defenses were gone. And his people were at the mercy of the human armada. He could have continued fighting, could have ordered guerrilla resistance, could have forced the humans to occupy and pacify the entire planet. But that would mean more death, more destruction, more suffering for people who had already suffered enough. The Melloran had started this. The Melloran would end it. Brel Tai transmitted his surrender on all frequencies, using the formal language required by galactic law. He offered unconditional terms, asking only that civilians be spared. Admiral Park Gina accepted, and then she did something no one expected. She left. The human fleet did not occupy Thessar. It did not install a puppet government or strip the planet of resources. It did not demand territorial concessions or permanent military bases. It simply gathered its ships, collected its wounded, recovered its dead, and withdrew. Before she left, Admiral Park Gina sent one final message to the Melloran people. We came here to defeat your military, and we have done so. We came here to show you that actions have consequences, and we have done so. We did not come here to become what you became on Harmony 7. We could have done to your children what you did to ours. We could have burned your cities and shot down your evacuation ships. We could have given you the same terror and pain that you gave us. But we are not you. Rebuild. Remember. And never forget that the restraint we showed today was a choice. We chose to be better than you were. We chose to end this with justice instead of vengeance. We chose to prove that humanity's strength is not just in our weapons, but in our ability to know when to stop using them. If you ever attack us again, we will not be so kind. The message ended. On Pellara Prime, Counselor Vethra watched the human fleet withdraw and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. The humans had won. They had crushed the Melloran military and proven their power beyond any doubt. But they had not become monsters. They had not committed atrocities. They had shown that they were better than the worst thing that had been done to them. Maybe, Vethra thought, there was still a chance for peace. He resigned from the council the next day. He had failed his people, failed the galaxy, failed to prevent a disaster that never should have happened. Someone else would have to lead the rebuilding. As he left the Great Hall for the last time, he passed a view screen showing President O'Meara addressing the galaxy from Earth. We will return to Council space, she said. We will resume trade and diplomacy. But we will never again trust blindly. We will never again assume that civilization guarantees safety. And we will never again be caught unprepared. To those who stood with us, we are grateful. To those who stood against us, we bear no grudge, but we do not forget. And to those who have yet to choose, know this. Humanity offers friendship to those who earn it, and opposition to those who threaten us. The choice of which you receive is yours. Vethra nodded slowly. It was a new galaxy now. A galaxy where humanity was no longer the young, naive species that smiled too much and trusted too easily. A galaxy where everyone understood exactly what humans were capable of. A galaxy that would think very carefully before harming human children again. On Earth, in a rebuilt settlement on the plains of what had been Harmony 7, a girl named Han Yuri walked through a memorial park. She was 12 now, 3 years older than when the Melloran had destroyed her world. The bandage on her forehead was gone, replaced by a small scar that would never fully fade. She stopped in front of a stone marker with 4 names carved into it. Her mother, her father, her little brother, her family, taken from her in fire and terror, remembered now in this quiet place. She placed a flower at the base of the marker, a white chrysanthemum, her mother's favorite. She stood there for a long moment, remembering their faces, their voices, their love. The war was over. The Melloran were defeated. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength and humanity's restraint. By any measure, It was a victory, but Han Yuri did not feel victorious. She felt the same empty space she had felt for 3 years, the hole in her heart where her family used to be. No military triumph could fill it. No message of peace could heal it. She would carry it forever, just as humanity would carry the memory of Harmony 7. But as she looked up at the stars, the same stars she had once watched with fear and grief, she realized that she no longer felt helpless. The galaxy knew what humans could do. The galaxy understood the cost of attacking them. Her family's death had not been in vain. They were remembered. They would always be remembered. And that was enough. Han Yuri turned and walked back toward the settlement, toward the new life she was building among other survivors, toward the future her mother had died to give her. Above her, the stars shone cold and bright. Somewhere among them, the Iron Fleet was returning home, its duty complete. Somewhere among them, the Melloran were burying their dead and learning the lessons that only defeat can teach. Somewhere among them, a galaxy that had underestimated humanity was adjusting its understanding. Han Yuri did not look back. She had learned what the galaxy had learned. That humanity's kindness was a gift, not a guarantee. That humanity's trust was precious and not easily restored once broken. That humanity's strength came not just from their ships and weapons, but from their refusal to forget those they loved. The stars would remember, and so would she.